ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to Infection Podcast. We cover the always evolving intersection of the video game industry alongside a little bit of modern political talk here and there. My name is Nick Craig. You can give me a follow on the illustrious Twitter machine at Nicholas M. Craig and check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. We got a lot of stuff going on this week, and it wouldn't be, couldn't do it alone. My trusty co-pilot, who is not passing out, is Brian. Too soon, maybe. Brian with an eye Aldrich. Hey, Brian, hope all's well.
Hey, I am doing well at Boise Computer on Twitter if you want to get a hold of me there, or at Brian Aldrich on Gab, Getter, Truth Social. One thing I wanted to say, I didn't tell you in the pre-show. My wife and I've been playing Diablo 4. I don't know if you've looked at it.
No, I've not.
It came out yesterday. I didn't do all the pre-order because I'm not super attached to. I look at the differences between the pre-orders. Yeah, I would have gotten it like 2 days early.
You don't.
And yeah, that was just like I'm not that attached. I won't have time over the weekend anyways. And by the time I thought of it, it's like, oh, it's out. So we sat there for a little while and played yesterday.
What are you
feels
playing
on? The Xbox Series X.
Okay, so you're playing it on Xbox.
Yep. So I'm just playing through some of the story. Feels very much like Diablo does. One thing, I don't know what engine they use. I think it's an in-house engine, if I remember correctly. I'm sure. But I was just hoping that the graphics would just be better in certain areas, because there's places where sometimes you can see that it's not high definition. Like for this, I remember when it came out in the 90s.
Original Diablo? Yeah.
The original
late 90s.
Diablo.
Yeah.
And the graphics at that time for what computers were generally capable of felt amazing for that game. It looked like it was just beautiful compared to anything else you could really play. And I would hope that for this generation of a game you're releasing, practically today, that it would be to where all of those little details, like you didn't see the pixelated and the stretched textures over a generic, I just was surprised to see that, because why have that? If you're going to do it, I would like to see an Unreal Engine 5 and just have everything ultra detailed, because that's the kind of stuff I like to see, because they put in a lot of detail, but it's just they miss it sometimes.
Is it possible that they have scaled down that version because of all of the different devices that it's on, and maybe it's just not a super high-res version? I mean, that's my initial thought.
Well, it almost seems a little buggy. I feel like they didn't beta test it enough.
Diablo 3 came out like a decade ago. I knew I was right about this. 2012, but I remember that Diablo 3 didn't look all that great when it came out. It's still the same kind of crappy early 2000s look to it. I think that's just kind of the Diablo. The menu system is still all weird and old and janky. I have a suspicion that they just haven't
between those years. It just hasn't changed a lot.
No, I don't think it's. I think that's part of the fact that Diablo 3. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of Diablo 3's HUD. I don't know how. I mean, why does Wikipedia have an image this small on source? I mean, seriously, what the hell? This image is. I mean, what the resolution of this image is literally. I can't even tell the resolution of the image. It's 373 by 266. Why is Wikipedia storing an image of this size?
Well, when it was edited and saved on a cell phone back in the 90s.
This is from 2012. This is Diablo 3. What I wanted to show was I just look like a rank amateur here.
Sorry, I should have told you I was going to talk about that.
No. You didn't show me. You didn't need to tell me anything. I vividly remember. Yeah, I mean, here's a picture of Diablo 3 in 2012. Does it look better than the one in the 90s? Objectively, yes. But in 2012 standards, this is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nothing amazing. This is nothing crazy. And I think that's kind of the one of the things of a game of this era. It's this weird top-down style game. The HUD is, I believe, almost exactly the same as it's been for this point 25 plus years.
Do you want to pull up? Do you do like Diablo 4 screenshots? There's a ton of them. It'll give you a little bit of an idea if you see one that maybe has the menu bar or something on there.
Screenshots. Yeah, let me get to that.
Because
now,
it does look better. I mean, there is more detail.
Did
but
we
it's
not
just that this is
play
missing.
a Diablo game on the phone? What did I just play? Wasn't that a Diablo game, or was that something else?
Yeah, Diablo
yeah,
Immortal.
yeah, I played that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Brian, it looks, it looks, it's exactly the same. I mean, the animation, the icons, the NPCs and the characters, they don't look great. They never have, and they didn't look good in the 2012 version. So I don't think it's a technology issue. I think it's this is the style of game that we make,
because they're creating huge amounts of levels. So it's like I can imagine. They got to churn out a certain amount of content, and I'm sitting there obsessing over one little level. It's like, well, why didn't they put all the definition and detail in this level on the 300 levels? Yeah, they designed 300 levels, and I'm obsessing over one because they didn't quite put in the level of detail. But I think there is probably a standard that they say, hey, we're making all of the objects to this standard, and that's where you cut it off. Don't get, but who knows.
Brian, we're very fortunate to live in our time in society where people with autism are treated as equals, so it's okay. It's okay. We understand that you have an issue, and we accept you for it, and we love you. Okay, I just want to make sure you know that. All right.
Now there are some day one bugs that I noticed.
Jesus Christ.
You look at the tattoos that they have. You can pick a tattoo that goes on your character, and with the various skin tones. So, like on my character, it looks like a weird glowing texture on the side of an object. It didn't look like a tattoo at all. The only one that seemed to look really good, but on the white character, like the white female that my wife picked, the tattoos look normal. Mine was a little bit darker skin, and they just look all crazy. So I'm sure that's stuff that they're going to have to polish and fix. A few bugs here and there, but I don't. As I was saying before, I don't feel like they tested it quite enough. Because there were glitches. I know the servers went down, so maybe some of my glitches were because the servers were crashing, at some point during that day.
Yeah, well, and let's be perfectly clear and honest about it, Brian. Who cares if you bug test this stuff? A game like Diablo, it's got such a strong fan base and people that are so interested in it. You're still playing it, presumably. It doesn't matter. I mean, as awful as that sounds, it just doesn't matter. You're still gonna play it, and you'll deal with the bugs. They'll fix them soon, TM, and you'll have a grand old time while it's happening. That's what we're dealing with.
That's the benefit and the downside of this kind of always online, because this is kind of an always online game, but always online generation now. Because when they made the original Diablos and games in that generation, the games had to be fairly polished, because you might be putting that on a CD that people were going to be directly installing and maybe not having access to internet, or it's not something that people would update. You to build an updating system into the infrastructure of the game because there wasn't a system for it. Like all kinds of things that now I think they rely too much on. We can patch it. We'll just put it out how it is. We'll fix it by release day, and then they don't, and a week later it's finally starting to run how it should have.
Well, I'm glad you're playing that. Keep us up to date with how that goes. Huge news this week. Yesterday. Apple held their annual WWDC, their Worldwide Developers Conference, and for the last couple of years, specifically the last 2 or so, there's been a lot of question about why Apple has not yet plunged into the VR space. You've got Facebook, or prior to the Facebook, you had Meta, now Facebook.
Faceplant.
You've got a Faceplant. You've got Oculus, of course, with their setup. You've got HTC. VR is one of the things that is super hot right now, and Apple has essentially been on the sideline until yesterday when they showcased this thing, which looks like a set of ski goggles. That's the equivalent to this. If you Shaun White snowboarder ski goggles, and I'll tell you what, this is Apple does stuff. They sure as hell do it with a bang, because this thing, they claim, by the way, it's called the Vision Pro headset, and it's going to be running Apple's Vision OS, and they claim that this can replace presumably you live alone, but it can replace your television, It can replace
Yeah.
your computer monitors. It's going to replace your sound system. When you are home, you will, and not eating or doing laundry or whatever, doing active tasks, you will be sitting on your couch or sitting in a chair, and you will be and you will have this Vision Pro headset on. They show it's this kind of weird AR/VR reality that they're creating.
Yeah, it's almost what they have to do, the augmented reality, because they can't take over your whole head like they do in VR, because you have to be able to still see what's going on around you if you're going to be doing it for a period
Exactly,
of time.
and that's kind of what this is doing. It's essentially mapping out your sphere in this, and then doing AR and VR on top of this. You can see on this screenshot, this would be a view inside the headset. You've got a web browser open, reading something, and you've got your iMessage window that you've got, of course, got connected with your Apple ID. So you've got text messages going on, and you're reading an article or watching a YouTube video. In this one here, it's a similar thing. You're sitting in your, looks like a bedroom in this case, and you're reading some sight unseen, whatever the hell that is. It's a website. This one sitting in, again, same room, and there's some sort of HUD or general user interface that you're using on this device. It does not come without some significant strings attached. Not only, by the way, the thing is tethered. You can see right here next to her, what would be her left cheek, there's a cord, there's like a power pack essentially that this thing comes with, that's holding all of the technology. It's got an M2 processor, which is the equivalent to what they have in their MacBooks, and what they're calling their R1 processor. That is, they have Brian, there's so many sensors, cameras, and different things in this device. They have built their own piece of silicon to just handle the sensor input, because they boast a 12 millisecond delay, which is, for all intents and purposes, real time. The human eye is not going to be able to decipher that. But that comes with a price tag. $3,500 is the cost for this thing. It is crazy expensive. It's not set to be available to the general public they didn't give a general public release date. It's going to be made available for developers later this year, and then they are going to presumably open it up to the public. But I guess, I'm sure you saw a little bit about it or read a little bit about it in the last day or so. Give us give me your general take, your general overview of something like this.
Well, I think this is the kind of thing that Apple needs to be doing if they want to be taken seriously, like they used to be back when Steve Jobs was in charge, because this is the type of thing that Steve Jobs would have pushed out the door and demanded perfection with. He would have said, I want it to be just like this, and I want it to have this, and I want it to be, and would have pushed it to where it was something that was like nothing else seen. If this is that, I'm not sure, because the people that are currently running it, I haven't seen that track record that he used to show. There's been too many things that have been released and weren't that impressive, or they were on par with the other phones on the market being released under Android, or now being beat by Android phones when it comes to stats, which never would have happened back in the day. And so I think here, the landscape is different, but if with something like this, if they can set the standard, just like they did with mobile music, just like they did with cell phones, they did a really good job with that. Apple TV, even. I mean, I don't have one personally that I use, but I've seen them in operation. If they treat it like that and get this to where it's something that your average everyday person gets in their house and is willing to use on a regular basis, and they can make it comfortable and it doesn't make you dizzy, get that, and people will start using them, because up to this point, it's been something that totally either engulfs everything where you can't do anything else, or it's been what Google put out that was weird looking glasses that give you a little box that you're supposed to stare up in the corner to try to be able to use your computer. If this is enough to where they can figure out, well, if you're just wearing that, how do you give inputs to it? Maybe Elon Musk's Neuralink, because that's that's
This
something
thing,
that just
it's got eye tracking technology. You literally look at the icons and it
okay.
will,
So you can give it inputs with eye
yeah,
tracking. Okay, good.
absolutely. Yeah, that's like that's essentially
so
from
they
what I
can get that
understand,
smooth.
because there's no I have an Oculus. No, I have
Mm-hmm.
a Quest. I have a Quest, and it's got the 2 joysticks, and that's your UI.
People, and people can't just walk around with those all day. I mean,
No,
to
you
be
look
a
like a
commonly used
jackass.
item.
I mean,
And so if you can get it with eye tracking to where
that's how it works.
almost seamlessly you're able to, categorize and make things happen. If they can make that feel like the way that they in the past have been able to make Apple products feel, as far as making complex seem simple and feel simple, but by making it even more complex. I think if they can do that with this, it might be the one that kind of is the thing that people use, just like for so long the MacBooks were, iPhones were, iPods were. It's just they have a list of things that they were the ones to use for years until other things caught up.
So 2 things. According to Apple, the Pro Vision, the Apple Vision Pro, that's the name of the device, will use a mixture of hand gestures. Again, the reason it has to have this special chip to handle the inputs
Like in
is
front
there's
of your
so
face
much data.
type of
Yeah,
gestures.
so I mean, they show the little picture here, and this is what typing in the interface looks like. So you will literally move your hands out as if you were typing on a keyboard.
Okay,
and
works.
again,
if it's smooth.
Yeah. Why does it have to have its own chip for handling inputs?
Yeah.
Because there's so much. So hand gestures, eye movement, and spoken commands. So there is no controller, no joystick. Now there's going to be games, which we'll talk about in a minute, that will be able to use things like the PlayStation 5 controller and stuff. But the other thing, Brian, that is what I took away from watching their thing, this is what Zuckerberg wanted to do with the metaverse. This was his idea with the metaverse, but the device wasn't practical for it. It didn't make any sense. It's just the device wasn't powerful enough, which makes sense. The Quest is like $300. This is $3,500. I mean, you're talking about buying an $800 clunker off of Facebook Marketplace or a brand new Lexus. I mean, it's just not. They're not even comparable products. But to me, this is, if there's going to be a modern metaverse, the new second world or whatever, or Second Life, whatever this stuff is, this is it, because it's got the mixture of usability, no controllers and none of that other stuff, and the sensory input that, correct, you can actually use this thing without just kind of sitting yourself on a chair. Like whenever I do pretty much anything in VR except for 1 or 2 games that I play, you typically sit down, because if not, you're, I don't know. I find it very uneasy not to know where I'm standing. I know you're supposed to get into the whole universe and everything, but it's tough. It's a hard thing to
That's
to
not
deal
what the
with.
metaverse is going to be, right? That the metaverse is going to be exactly as you're saying. It's going to be when everybody has a device, just like pretty much what Facebook was for a long time for grandmas and people. That was the internet for them. And so they would go there and there was all these things that they could see and do. I think this is going to be where it's the commonplace that's joint, because if you're going to have augmented reality where you're walking down the street and you're seeing maybe a virtual advertisement in front of a store that's, giving you a special whatever, that needs to go between multiple systems. It can't just be an Apple product. People aren't going to want to develop all these things. So if they could come up with a standard, because it wouldn't be metaverse if they were by device. It needs to be something to, no matter what, just like on the internet, when I go to Microsoft.com, it goes to one place. That's got to be the metaverse.
Well,
where whatever you're getting into, what you consider the metaverse, has to be the same place, just like the internet.
If I know anything about Apple, they are not. They will make it, the metaverse will exist, but you'll have to have the Apple Vision Pro to do it.
That's probably what will overtake them in the end, right? I
yeah.
always say they start out at top, hold it for a while, and then eventually, they get caught up with or overtaken on things. This may be what ends up leading to it, is to where, because they don't let loose, and they want to eventually join into what becomes the metaverse, they're going to have to open the wall and merge them together, however they choose to do that.
Yeah. You can, iTunes. I mean, it was, where else are you going to buy music? What are you, an idiot? Like, you're buying it on iTunes or you're torrenting it. But yeah, I definitely don't envision that. But Let's talk about the gaming side of this, Brian. Our good friends Unity, who we talk about a lot, of course, with a lot of the newer games coming out. All that stuff is running on Unreal, but Unity is still the premium engine for mobile games, tablet games, and still a lot of general PC games. It is an incredibly popular, diverse engine that can run on literally anything. And their stock surged nearly 26% on Monday after Apple announced that they would be working with Unity as part of the release of their headset. With this, Susan Prescott, Apple's vice president of worldwide developer relations, said, "We know there is a community of developers who have been building incredible 3D apps for years." So we're not even talking about gaming yet. 3D apps for years. "Today, we are excited to share that we've been working with Unity to bring those apps to Vision Pro. So popular Unity-based games and apps, because there's plenty of apps, you can use the Unity engine to build 3D apps and things as well, can gain full access to Vision OS features such as pass-through," that's where you can literally see, "high-resolution rendering, and native gestures." So that is what they announced. And I mean, I know that they're in different spots, but this is huge for Unity. This is massive.
Okay. But following right behind that, we've got something from Epic. Epic, they just released for their developer tools for Unreal Engine an update for Apple Silicon Macs.
Yes.
So some of the Apple hardware they're supporting natively now, which should allow for people to be able to make and take advantage of all these high-end Unreal Engine 5, because that's really where it's going to be at. If you can get, in the end, if you'll want it to be ultra realistic, because if you're blending something into the real world, it has to be seamless. And I think that that's going to be where it ends up going. But, I think this will get it to where I would assume this would allow you, with this native support, for them to maybe make apps or games, whatever they're going to make on Unreal Engine.
It might, but
type of device.
It's going to come down to whether Apple's partnering with Unity. So they say the things like, what did I say? Pass-through, high-resolution rendering, and native gestures. That stuff's likely not to be available in every single app. So this partnership with Unity is going to be really big for them. And one of the other big things to note about this, you talked about advertising. Unity's got one of the biggest ad marketplaces in the world because of all of their games and apps that are all out here. So that the advertising element of this is essentially going to be native with it too. So this is big for Unity, who I think we've talked about on this show. I don't know that I'd be able to pull the episode for you, but how they're not going to compete with Epic when it comes to making this crazy, hyper realistic, detailed universe. They're not going to compete with that, but they don't have to. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
They kill it in the mobile game market. And if, depending on how this device goes, and again, I have to note, $3,500 price tag. This thing is not cheap. But depending on how this goes, Brian, I mean, you cement yourself in the next generation of how people interact with technology. Shit, I'd rather be Unity than Unreal in that case.
Because if they're going to make the tools that make it easy to be able to get these objects in this metaverse world, however that happens.
We know how easy it is. We've played with the Unity editor. It's so incredibly easy to do stuff.
I think that with AI, if they can start implementing AI into these to where the common person, just like people with AI have been making pretty crazy things lately, in the development world, if I want to be able to make a little thing to entertain myself in my virtual little world, I can have the AI generate it for me. I don't know how to make it myself, but I can have it on the fly. I want chess, because how's the metaverse really work? It's really going to come down to AI, because a person's going to have to be able to say, I want to play chess with my friend. Okay, either somebody's going to have to make a chessboard, and they're all going to be a couple of the ones that you choose from, and then it's going to place chessboard.graphic in right here, and then you play chess on that object. I don't necessarily think that may be the only way that this works. I think the way that's going to be cool is where, just like Snapchat, when they have these things that are happening with the video feed, I think you're going to have something like that where AI is creating objects, so creating a chessboard based on what it knows a chessboard to be, placing it in front of you. It's totally unique to you because it was just made, just like all the stuff with ChatGPT. and then bam, there you go. I think that would be a much better implementation, because the no limits features of it will draw people in. I think people will see it and feel like it's limitless, because that's what the metaverse needs to be, is limitless, like the internet kind of feels.
Exactly. No question on that. So that's set. I think developers are getting it late this year. Should be available sometime next year. So that'll give us a lot of. It'll be interesting to see from a gaming realm how all that works out.
Yep, we will see. All right. One thing. Do you care where we go from here?
No, not at all.
All right. Cool. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about PlayStation for just a little bit, because
what should we got?
I thought it was interesting that there was an article that came out where Romania's antitrust department has put a probe against PlayStation, and you know what they're accusing them of?
The exclusive. It's got to be something with the PC exclusivity.
Yes. They say that they are abusing the games industry with these PS5 exclusivities, which we've been talking about from the get-go.
Brian,
it
has
to be Romania that backs us up.
It's often said the thing you accuse other people of doing are the things that you're guilty of yourself, and I hate to be that guy.
They're the perfect example.
They are the perfect example of this. Unbelievable.
Abusing your citizenry versus. There we go. So, and I do agree with this for the most part, though, that now they're a private company that can do whatever they want, so I don't necessarily call it abusing. There are limits that end up sometimes on levels of abuse, but here I think that if they want to do a bunch of exclusivities and that's their thing, have that be their thing, because in the end, I think that then other people that are competing against them will come up with strategies and things that work better to compete against somebody that's doing that. Whether it'll be people saying, well, we're going to get exclusives so you can't get them. That may be the way that it's dealt with. Or, people, they just may make better games that everybody else has, and those ones aren't interesting enough to go get a PlayStation anymore. But I think that trying to stop them from doing this. I don't know that that's really a good answer, because, shouldn't they be able to make exclusives if they want to? Like, is it really our right to have every single game the exact way that we want it to have the game? I mean, it's good to feel that way, but I don't know that this is something where they need to step in and try to change it.
Yeah. That'll stop in a minute.
Got some weather rolling in.
Yeah, apparently, I wasn't aware, but it apparently is. So it is interesting as you watch them lob grenade after atomic bomb after stick of dynamite at Microsoft and make all of these horrific accusations. And Brian, you were the first one that I think mentioned the idea. Sony is not only the video game company, but what about Sony Motion? What about the movie? I mean, they completely control. They don't control that market, but Microsoft doesn't even have.
They're one of the biggest players
to compete to that. And I know that they just released the new Spider-Man movie in the last couple of weeks. I think that may have been even this past week that came out. I don't know anything about the Romanian Competition Council, the RCC, but
I'm not sure how on the up and up they are.
As Mr. Leahy would say, cheers, genitals, and go along with his. I mean, Brian, it's about time. And this this piggybacks on another story you have in here where they're doubling down on it, saying, you know what, PC players, piss off. We're not doing it.
What's going to make them really compete? Because they're saying, oh, well, we can't let Microsoft, as I've said before, you can't let Microsoft be too good, right? You got to hold back Microsoft a little bit. But if you look at what PlayStation's doing, they're not trying to be the best. Because if you really wanted to get to the biggest market, wouldn't you release on PC and PlayStation? You're still selling the game. You're not helping the competition necessarily. You're getting the money other than the fee from Steam or however you decide to distribute the game, or through your own, come up with something yourself.
But see, this is precisely the argument that Microsoft makes, and continues to play out on. They're not going to, I don't for 1 minute. And Microsoft's a greedy company. All corporations are greedy. It's in their nature. Their goal is to make as much money as possible for their shareholders. It comes with, so I don't need to hear any of that. The point is that it would make 0 sense for Microsoft to take a franchise like Call of Duty, arguably one of the most well-known gaming franchises outside of Mario and all that stuff that has ever existed, and strip it off of, 30% of their player base? I mean, I don't know what the number is. It's got to be close to a third. Well, that would be the stupidest thing that they could possibly do. There would be no logical business sense, and Microsoft is a business sense company. They've proven that. So, Sony's stupid.
Thinking. But see, that's their other way of thinking. They're thinking, all right, if we don't release PC day one, that means the people are getting a perk for owning a PlayStation, and because then they'll be more likely to own PlayStation, so they can get day one access to games that they really like.
Which
I think that's the thinking behind it, which is fine. But that we just have to accept. I mean, if that's how they want to do it, that's how they want to do it. And if you're feeding into buying a PlayStation to get that day one exclusive, you're justifying them doing it.
Well, but
really,
so I have, I think, a little bit of insight on this. Turn my clock back a decade, 16 years old. Well, maybe 12 or 14 years ago. All right, I wasn't playing PC games. And at the time, you go back to the late 2000s, before 2010, you had video games were very segmented. You had console games and PC games. Very little crossover between those two things. Yes, you had the Maddens and maybe a couple of those, but Call of Duty, those games, those early PC games, they made a couple of the first ones early. Then they stopped for many years because there was just no market for it. So this is a common thing for me. I'm very familiar with the idea of timed exclusives. I dealt with it my entire video game, when I was in middle school and high school. It was all exclusives. I never played God of War. I never played all these other games because they were exclusives. My friends that had PlayStations never played Halo. They never got the Call of Duty DLC early because they didn't have an Xbox. So that in itself isn't the egregious act to me. It's that they are pointing at Microsoft and saying, ooh, look, Boogeyman. And it's like, this is what both of you guys have done forever because that's the objective. You want people to buy your consoles because you don't make any money on them. So that's exactly what you do.
Yep. And I mean, we'll see if I assume they're going to keep doing it. And the only way that they'll stop is if they end up being the ones that are losing out, and it kind of becomes the public joke that, hey, look at how they're doing this. Nobody plays them anymore. But I think they're going to ride it out because some of these things do go back and forth with the console wars, but I think they're unsure of where the console wars are going because, I mean, just look at how they kind of responded to the whole cloud gaming thing. That's still very much up in the air. One thing I wanted to mention,
can I touch on that before you move?
Thing. Yeah.
Sony's lost. I mean, they are
the cloud. Yeah.
There's so many directions right now. We just talked about VR. You've got cloud game streaming. That's a thing. You've got the physical hardware itself. You've got PC. You've got mobile game. They're in the middle of the ocean, Brian, just wading around, and there's nothing around them, and they don't know what direction to head. And that's a tough position to be in. I honest to God don't believe they know what the hell to do.
And that's the thing is I think they're kind of behind trying to figure out what they're going to do and seeing all these other people sprinting. And there's a lot of directions to go right now. With all the VR and just AI and just everything. To be the leader in the market, you have to have been working on that for years. And I think they haven't put in the prep time. And I don't think they were ready for it. They get the things that we're looking at now saying, oh, that's cutting edge. I don't think they were ready for in a lot of the areas.
No.
One thing that a lot of the objection to the CMA, which was the UK's rejection of the whole Activision Blizzard purchase, was over, as we talked about, the cloud gaming.
Yes.
They didn't want cloud gaming being dominated. But I found some interesting things that, for supposedly CMA only spent 4 weeks out of its 32 weeks time that it had to investigate the whole merger on cloud.
Of course, it's
You
not a
know,
big
so
deal. Sony doesn't have
but
anything to compete with.
they justified their whole decision on that. If that's
I
your whole
know.
decision, half the time of what you're devoting to analyzing that should be on the reason of the rejection. If that's what you're putting the crux in the whole decision, basing it on that, then it better be a strong argument, and that's not a strong argument right now.
It was the stupidest argument when we heard it, and I don't know if it was you or me made the point that either they are going to be just excoriated on such a public stage where they have to revert their decisions, or Sony will just pull everything out and move it over to the European Union.
Well, the EU claims that they are saying that CMA overstated it.
I'm sure,
to them, that's their
course.
statement. One thing that of course, then all the rumors come out, and I think this was from Windows Central. They're saying that a CMA director who blocked that Microsoft Activision merger previously worked for a Sony law firm, which
coincidence
should make it so you'd have to recuse yourself if you're in a position of power making decisions like this for government reasons. You would have to recuse yourself. You're no longer non-biased in that area, or you at least have to say, you'd have to make a statement that, hey, I have a history in this, so take my opinion into the whole matter, with that understanding. But yeah, as they say, conflict of interest identified. Is it enough for them to go back? And it's not really a court, but they can go back and say, hey, we feel like we were treated unjustly. They don't have time to redo the whole thing.
They're appealing.
Maybe it'll just make, but that may be enough for them, for the CMA to just kind of say, all right,
whoops,
this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Or blame it on that person. They could be the scapegoat for looking like foolish idiots. Say, we didn't realize. Get rid of that person, make them the scapegoat because they detoured us and they blinded us all. We couldn't see it. I'm really not stupid. It's like one of those situations.
Yeah, I think these couple of stories that you've got in here are the early stages of trying to save any sort of face. And oh my God, can you believe it? I
can't believe one of the people worked for the we didn't see it coming. The money that we received from it.
The property we were buying,
we don't have to give that back.
Just happened to be the property that was owned by the mayor's brother. I thought
it was a really good deal. I had no idea.
God, how did this happen? Yeah, they're gonna have to try and do anything they can here to save face. But even after this is said and done, which they'll have to come around on this decision. It doesn't even seem conscionable to me that they won't. But once they do come around on this, this is going to be a huge black eye for the UK.
Yeah.
Because any major tech merger, which is predominantly where these things are happening, is going to they might. I'm not going to say they're going to write the UK off because that's a big market to do that. But it might change the amount of importance that they put on the United Kingdom, which is only going to screw over the economy and hurt people that work. Because that's all this is. You're just turning it off for everybody else. Nobody wants to work with an agency like that or a state or a country like that. Case in point. China. Why doesn't everybody do business with China? Because you can't. They make it so impossible, literally in some cases impossible to do business, that it is not worth a lot of Western companies doing business in China. So they don't. Yeah. Plain and simple, because it's not a conducive environment to do business in.
And that's exactly. And if they can make it to where it just isn't worth it and companies start pulling out because you're being overly restrictive, because this is happening. Sometimes it's in the name of global warming. Sometimes it's the name of whatever cause, or, we're not going to do business with these people. Some countries will kind of like China used to. You garden yourself in, you gate yourself in. They may do that, but it's going to only hurt their citizens. It's only going to hurt themselves, I think.
There's
But
a term for this, Brian.
we'll see what happens.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. And I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of creating it here. That's it's interesting. Speaking of Microsoft, this is a concerning story. They got fined $20 million, which is not a lot of money, but it's not an insignificant amount. $20 million, even for a company like Microsoft, is a lot of money. That's enough for them to piss away on some stupid project.
Somebody may have gotten fired for this.
Yeah, this is definitely close to fireable at $20 million. But this is the concerning part of it. So there's this thing in the United States known as the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, known as COPPA, C-O-P-P-A. And it's a regulatory law that dictates how privacy and identifying information for children under 13 are collected. Why is that age so important? It's for years, the big thing with Facebook is you can't have a Facebook account if you're under 13 years old. That's why that age of 13 is in there, because if it is, now you have to deal and work under these privacy protection laws, and Facebook doesn't want to deal with it. It's why many websites say you have to be 13 to create an account. What it is it's a Privacy Protection Act for children. So anybody under the age
I think
of 13.
Epic, it kind of similar some of the things Epic got in trouble for, right?
Yes.
I mean, they had some other things on top of that, but I think this was one of the things that was covered in that.
Yeah. So this is something that's been in place for quite some time, and now the Federal Trade Commission went after Microsoft and settled with them. So they didn't take it to a full court or anything like that, but settled with Microsoft for $20 million and agreed to tighten parental controls. So here's a little backstory on it. Prior to late 2021, so less than 2 years ago, any user signing up for an Xbox account was asked for their first and last name, email address, and date of birth, along with requests for phone numbers. Users were also asked to agree to Microsoft's service agreement and advertising policy. Up until 2019, a box that allowed Microsoft to send promotional messages and share user data with advertisers was also present and pre-checked, according to the complaint filed by the Justice Department. Users under 13 were not prompted to seek parental consent until after the data had already been submitted. Further details suggest that from 2015 until 2020, Microsoft retained this data even in the event that a parent did not complete the registration process. So if you were under the age of 13 and you filled out your age correctly, which nobody did, I don't remember when I made my first Xbox. I was like 10, and it was like, "Oh, how old are you?" And I was like, "I was born in 1960." But I mean, hey, you know the game. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Oh, don't act like Brian when you were in your Yahoo chat rooms at 11.
They didn't ask you. I don't think they asked you anything. There were no
they didn't even have any-
restrictions.
Yeah, no
They
restrictions.
didn't have any restrictions while I was younger. What are you talking about? That's why I laugh at it. It's just, we didn't.
Back in my day, you could go into a
Back before you needed a password to get on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So the problem was if you entered a birth date under the age of 13, it would still let you create an account, and then it would go through the parental process. But if the parents never bothered with it, or the child never told the parent about it, like, oh, don't worry about it, it was just me creating my Xbox account, Microsoft was still selling that data to advertisers and storing it improperly. Which, I'm not a big government guy. I think I've made that pretty clear over the last couple of years. I'm sure many longtime listeners have seen me morph. So I'm not a big fan of general things like this, but I do think that there is some role of government in regards to specifically children's privacy.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, I'm 26 years old. Brian's 3,006 years old. We can make our own decisions about privacy. We're adults. And you and I choose to use iOS. We choose to use Android. We choose to use Windows. There's all of these things, privacy that we choose day in and day out. An 11-year-old that gets an Xbox and creates an account doesn't have the ability to know, and shouldn't be taken advantage of. And I think it's a serious issue, and it's only becoming more of an issue because you've got, parenting now by iPads where kids are using tablets at what 4 or 5 years old. They're completely fluent in it. So this is only going to become more and more of an issue.
Well, yeah, and I do think it's going to become more of an issue, but I think with this, there's a lot of, with kids especially, there has to be all these guardrails of what they can get into, because the kid's going to do whatever you put in front of them. If they think that it's a door that's supposed to be closed that looks like it can open, they're going to go through the door, right? And so I think that with this, it's going to be something to where, I don't like government stepping in and telling me what I can and can't do on things, but there has to be a line. Google does something really interesting where they have these crazy walls of, like, with the Google accounts, I can't transfer their accounts between family groups. Like, you can't transfer their accounts until like they're 13. There's all these restrictions of things you can and can't do before the age of 13 with an account, and then after 13, because our oldest, he's 13, about to turn 14 now. But when he turned 13, we could finally then move him to my account, so he got to take advantage of my Play Pass, because it was impossible until he turned 13. So,
because they had to completely segment that data. It's like it's a whole silo, completely separate, because of this law. And it's a lot for a company to do that. It's why certain companies like Google do it and offer the option, and others are like, screw it, I'm not going to bother with it. It's too much work. And
these
then we're
laws
open up
change
to a
over
lawsuit.
time too.
Yeah, they do.
But there's problems with I've seen issues where laws will change, and then they have to, after the fact, try to force you into things or force changes. That's one place that I think this gets kind of messy, is when they start saying, okay, well, this is to help protect children, so then they make it a law that you have to enforce no matter what, and then it messes with old accounts or ones that were made when that wasn't a law and it didn't matter. Well, what do you do with that account? Do you make them close it down? I think it creates some mess. But I think with the FTC, I think they were saying that it was a glitch, that this wasn't supposed to happen. If Microsoft claims that it was a technical glitch that led to their systems retaining the information,
they're liars.
It wasn't supposed to. Well, probably because they put the menus in the wrong order, right? An engineer, whether that was on purpose, I don't know if that was on purpose or not.
I don't think it was on purpose either. But a glitch.
But they gathered it before they made the decision to keep it, but then they never dumped it. Like, there was a procedure that they started down, but then they forgot that was what's supposed to happen at this point, the dumping part.
A glitch is one thing. Incompetence in programming and workflow is another. That is not a glitch. When you build a system and allow a 12-year-old to opt into advertising before you do the verification, that's not a glitch. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. You just didn't program it correctly. So I'm sure that's what they're going to claim.
This seems more of it's just nobody caught it because nobody thought about it up until now.
Which is and that's why I'm saying this is a huge deal, because there does need to be some level of, I feel like a scumbag saying stuff like this with the government, but there's got to be some level of protection at a certain level. Yeah. And this is it. Now, the honest reality
totally
is
blanket.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to, like, Europe in some areas, I know that they kind of do a blanket. You're not allowed to gather on anybody unless they opt in. And I would then say, then a 13-year-old doesn't have, anyone under the age of 13 doesn't have the option to opt in. That way, everybody, for all of these things where you're gathering, nothing is defaulted to yes. I make the decision to yes on everything, just because that's what they're doing with all their cookie stuff and everything from ever since they did change those laws. Changed it to where we won't run into these problems anymore. Make everything opt in. You're not allowed to force choices on me anymore. I can choose to have you pre-fill something for me if I say yes, but everything else by default is opt in. You can still make it easy for the user, but I think that would save a lot of these headaches and the privacy issues and people feeling like they're tricked, because some people aren't tricked, they're just not smart. And that's what it comes down to sometimes.
It might save some of the headaches, you're right, but you know what it also does is it creates significant less amounts of data that are sellable to
that they can gather.
advertisers.
I'm fine with that. I don't
Well,
want it to have it
you
all.
can. You're fine with it all you want. Microsoft and Google, their biggest business is selling freaking user data. Google's biggest business is not their search engine itself. It's selling the data about you, the metadata that to advertisers to sell things to you. That's their market. The reason opt-in is such a foreign concept for these. Foreign's not the right word. The reason opt-in doesn't really exist is because they don't want people to know what they're agreeing to. That's why EULAs in terms of service are the size of a War and Peace. They don't want you to know because they can sell the data.
That's also why YouTube doesn't have a skip forward 30 seconds and a skip back 10 seconds button, because they don't want you skipping past the ads.
They have that with the keyboard.
Oh, do they? But not
Yeah,
something
it's
like
fine.
on a phone where you can just skip back.
Yeah, on the iPhone you can you double tap and at 15 seconds in each direction.
Oh, does it? Oh, we'll have to try it on.
I
they don't
use it all the
offer
time.
that on an Android that
I'm like,
I've seen.
It's like, and it's time to tell you about our. All right, welcome back for this.
Okay, so they've got it built in there,
yeah.
but do they show it to you? I mean, they don't
Yeah.
make it easy to access because they don't want everyone to know that you can skip past.
I don't know.
You can't really skip past the ads. They lock you into the ads now, so maybe that's why.
Well,
they finally
their ads no,
but
in
the
terms
built-in
of a video,
ads, because people are doing live reads now.
Yeah, you just double
2-minute, 3-minute live reads sometimes, and that's the beauty of a podcast is you can be like, okay, 30 seconds forward.
Yep.
Okay, is that a minute read? Okay, we got past it.
If you have the video open, you double tap on the right side of the video for forward and double tap on the left for back. Yeah,
that's always irritating me about YouTube. Is
I use it all the time, daily.
I love that about podcasts, being able to skip, because you get a live read going, you can skip past. But now for people that don't use ads in YouTube, they do the live reads. It's like you're kind of stuck unless you're.
Well, I will state for the record, as a man that works in an advertiser-driven business, I think the advertisers are great. And advertising is
it allows for free stuff, like your radio.
It's free for people to listen to.
Free.
Yes, it is. It's not essential. It's 100%.
That's what created the idea of free.
Yes.
And that's with the internet. There's a lot of things that people are able to do, things that they do on the internet because YouTube, advertising, all of these things, advertising, Twitter, Facebook. And it brought all these things that you think are really cool, but they're doing it, as you said, by gleaning your information and selling it to the highest bidder.
Absolutely. And that's what you sign up for. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. And in the case, your data is the lunch that you're eating, I guess. Or no, the lunch that never mind.
You're being fed.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. All right. Got a couple minutes left before we get out of here. What else is going on?
All right, let's touch on something here really quick that there was a game that we had talked about a long time ago.
Okay.
And remember when I would talked about Life is Feudal?
Is this the game with the doors that didn't
work?
It
was the super hardcore. It's like the super hardcore survival game.
But the doors didn't work.
No, that was a different one. That was not the super hardcore game. That was was another medieval game where
was that the Amazon game? Was that New World?
No, that wasn't. This was one that had but I know it's one you're thinking about. I just can't remember the name of it.
Okay, Life is Feudal.
But Life is Feudal was just a super hardcore survival.
Okay. Yes, I do remember this. Yes.
Well, they shut down for a while, and then they popped back up, and they're selling the option that for $20 you can join into a play test.
Of a game that's out?
And they're doing well, no, it's not out. They're going to be doing a play test now so they can test to releasing it. And so it's kind of like what they did, I guess, with H1Z1, if you really think about it. But this is $20 per month. It's not $20.
Oh my God.
They want you to join the play test for $20, and it's a subscription.
$20 a month? It's more than Game Pass.
Yeah, I know. So
holy, that's 2 Twitter Blue subscriptions, Brian. That's a lot of money.
I know.
Wow.
So this is something I thought it was interesting. They're trying to build just a gigantic MMO. I mean, it's a gigantic MMO where you can have your own castle and build your own castle and have your own lands. And They're the closest I've seen get to it, but it is a super hardcore game to where you're like getting a stick and then you're trying to dig in the earth with a stick just to get a pebble to make it's maybe a bow and arrow or something, but it's hardcore. And so if you're casual, it's not the thing to play. But $20 a month, I'm sure you get some people that will do it because they'll just put tons of time into this game. But
Oh, okay.
it's
Yeah, I remember this. So
going
there's
on
two
for a long
different
time.
versions. There's Life is Feudal Your Own. That was the game that was on
Yep.
Steam for so long, and now this is the Life is Feudal MMO.
And then yeah, because they kind of broke it apart and they had it to
Yeah.
where there was Life is Feudal and it was like a town building game or something
Yes.
to where you could build. And then there was Life is Feudal MMO, which was supposed to include all these different pieces because those were supposed to be pieces that were going towards building the MMO. And so this should have everything to where you have the city management, the huge open world.
Okay, so I was right though. This is part of the issue, and it says down here in the article, it's $20 a month, but that's for everybody, regardless. Some people spent between $30 and $100 on the different versions of the game when it was available on Steam.
Was being kickstarted too, if I remember
you may have
correctly. Like there's
spent
people that support it.
You may have spent $50 on this game buying this version back in 2018 when it came out, and now that's done, and you're still, and so even though you bought that, you now still have to subscribe to this $20 a month subscription. That is retarded. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah. And they were struggling to get enough people to play, these various pieces of it in the first place. You're putting a huge pay gate on whatever you do. I mean, maybe if they're wanting to test one server, you can get enough people on there to really test one server.
But why? There's not even a demand to play it if it's free.
Yeah, it's a super hardcore game. I mean, there'll be people that play it, but finding that audience, it's not going to be your average game that you go to the person that you at the bar and be like, "Hey, you play Life is Feudal?" They're like, "What are you talking about?" It's just it'll be a certain specialty game, I think, for a certain type of player.
All right, this is very rudimentary information, but let's take it for what it's worth. So this is a Steam DB. This is lifetime player count, and its max was back in 2014 at 7,000. It peaked again in 2018 around 3,000, and that's been it. I mean, there's no player base. This company might generate like a couple of $100 a month, like maybe $300 or $400 a month. That's it.
Yeah, and that's going to be a problem.
Well, how are you going to build the largest MMO ever with 18 players?
Well, you've got to come up with a way to pay for it and be able to handle the infrastructure. If you're claiming something that big, you got to have the infrastructure to handle a ton of people.
But see, this is always the issue: is you can't. MMOs are expensive to run.
Yeah.
We understand that. There's a fixed cost for servers and data and all of that. I don't know why it seems like every freaking MMO that we've ever covered on this show has wanted to be the largest, the most expansive, the biggest. What was that one that we saw one at PAX where you would run around? We have the T-shirts for it. Rend. We're going to be the biggest MMO this, and it's going to be the biggest battles that you've ever seen. There's never been a player base for these games. Guys, create a small-scale MMO, and then when you have 150,000 players, hire a bunch of developers, kick up the development to 1,000%, and blow the socks off your players. But all of these companies come in with this stupid expectation that we're going to charge $20 a month, which is more than a freaking Netflix subscription, for you to play some video game with 8 other people. It doesn't make any sense. This is worse than the CMA's decision.
Well, this is something that it only makes sense if they can get a huge player base to make a huge infrastructure to have a giant world. Problem is they're wanting to offer the giant world with a very small player base. Well, the type of player I am, if you're telling me there's a giant world, I want to run to the farthest extent of the world and see how far it goes. Like I want to just start running and keep going until I can see where
again.
Yeah, where you're not expecting me to go there. And so you're going to have the server that has the capability to do that if I'm going to be on your server. Well, why would you build that out for the 12 20 people that you maybe have playing your game? As you said, that's a perfect idea. Make it smaller, make it to where it's fun, build up that
Yes.
player base, and then expand it out and make it open to the world to see as people start to kind of like, Facebook started really small and then people discovered it and the reason they're still around is because they expanded fast enough, right? You get a game that's going to be gigantic has to be something that can grow fast, keep up with it, and make it to where everybody's feeling like that they're having the same experience across the whole thing.
I just don't understand where this idea is coming from. I don't know that we have not seen any success. I mean, I can't name one of those games that we have ever talked about with all of this stuff. It's
always silly ones like Rust, that kind of take a part of it, but then they don't keep it. It's not a hardcore. But Rust never. It's not a hardcore in the same way this is.
But Rust isn't even that big. Those maps are relatively small. Rust never claimed to be.
Oh, you're talking about his world size. I'm
just talking about this whole concept of we're going to be Rust. Rust isn't even an MMO. And they didn't ever claim to be they just claimed to be a sandbox. I mean, it was a new version of Gary's mod essentially with a little bit of with PvP and stuff. But all of these games are going to be the Atlas. The scale is so big, you'll be able to drive your ship forever, and it will never stop. You'll just go from server to server to server to server to server. It's so expansive. Star Citizen, it's bigger than the real galaxy. None of this has ever worked. Why do we all have the same? It's a failed track record. There's no success with this roadmap, and everybody still does it. Who's the stupid jackass that is getting Chronicles of Illyria? Brian, he told us in person in 2017 that Chronicles of Illyria was going to be the biggest video game ever made.
Ever made.
Him and his wife were going to build the biggest video game that had ever been ever thought of. No concept had ever been as great as his. I don't understand.
I remember walking away saying, us making comments to each other about how it was pretty much just taking every single little checkbox of what you would want to put in. If you took everybody's opinion of what they want to put in a video game of that type, just saying, okay, yes to all. That's what it felt like walking away, that he pretty much just took everything and said, this is what it's going to have. Of course, he didn't deliver on any of that. But I think is really in the end, what I think will win out and be what this type of a game is something to where it's not so much about being an online game, but being a game where the type of technology like the Apple is putting out, where you can immerse yourself into it, integrate a heavy level of AI to where they only have to render what's around you and estimate what's going to happen farther out, or use AI to come up with likely what happened, so that you can walk around in this world where there's people and things that are happening like it's really happening, and you've immersed yourself into a giant world. Like, that makes sense to me because you don't have a huge server infrastructure trying to do that. But with these, they want to put 1,000 people on a map. Okay, well, great, 1,000 people. There's times I'm in a room with 1,000 people. That's not enough to sustain a company. I want when they say big, like the metaverse, I want it to be big, and I don't think having it to where everybody's running around each other in these big environments is what makes sense. AI is going to make it to where it makes sense, to where you can make it to where big isn't repetitive. And I think that's what they have to get past, because all these things end up being really repetitive.
And to me, it's not even the repetition. It's none of these games have any concept of gaining a user base. So you can spend a gazillion dollars on AI and servers and everything else, and it doesn't matter if you don't have a core audience or, honestly, an interesting concept, besides of, as you mentioned, the laundry list of, oh, look, here's every feature that every video game has had in the last 15 years, all in one. Great. It's never going to happen. And I get it. You're always the visionary. I'm not a visionary. I'm not a big thinking person or whatever. So maybe I just can't comprehend it, but it just seems like all of these ideas are so vast, so extreme, with 4 guys from Romania or Chechnya developing the game. And it's like, I don't get it. Just build a freaking cool game like Firewatch. that is
it has
small.
To be natural
the
growth.
game was an hour and a
that's the
half
thing.
long. And I have a
Yep.
T-shirt, and it's got a cult following. It doesn't have to be everything. It just has to be good, and people will buy it and play it.
But I think it has to be that natural growth where people are wanting to play it. Like they're estimating, I don't have the article in front of me, but that GTA 6 is going to make like $1 billion in the first day or something.
I'm sure it will.
You know what I'm saying? It's
I'll
got
buy
to be
2
one
copies.
where that's the thing is for things like this, either if it's going to grow from small, it's got to be that natural fire that just makes it keep growing. That's why I said like Facebook, to where they kept up with the growth. That's why they were on top for so long. I think a game like this that's that giant can't come in with swinging saying we're going to be the biggest. We're going to have all of this. Make something that is super fun, playable, and then if you're wanting it to be a giant world, figure out how you're going to let everybody continue to join it and it feel like, they're just joining the game and it's not changing the game. Like that's what they're going to figure out. And hopefully when one figures that out, I think you'll have a big open world game. But right now, all of these, as you said, been the same. It's been, and then they just can't deliver on any of it.
Well, fortunately, Brian, for folks that want to keep up to date with you, it's not an expansive sandbox and the biggest thing that's ever existed. It's just a couple of social media platforms, right?
Oh, yeah. If you want to find me at Boise Computer on Twitter or at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, or Truth Social. If you want to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com, or if most importantly, go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, and join our server on Discord. If you go to the upper right-hand side, you can do that. There's a show news channel that if you want to toss a link in there, a video, whatever it is that you want us to reference before the live show, we look at those and a good chance that they'll make it into our show notes. If you want to play some Ark, there's 11 Ark servers running on there and a Conan Exiles server. We also have politics. If you want to jump in, you can join the politics and then join that chat as well if you'd like. We have video of ways of watching us through Twitch and YouTube, which is live, and then after the fact, you can get through Rumble as well. If you're going to be listening through the lower right-hand side, there's a lot of different ways you can listen, but those are all recorded and uploaded after the fact. If you are, there's a video and audio player built into the show notes for that particular episode, and you can watch or listen and follow along with links or videos that we have referenced throughout the show. Makes it really easy if you're going to listen, but want to still be able to see some of the video or see an image that we're talking about. So perfect addendum to the show. And if you want to support us, you can do that through the support option up top or infectionpodcast.com/support.
Yep, absolutely. We've got a lot of folks continuing their monthly support through Twitch. That is greatly appreciated. Brian, greatly appreciate you, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Yep, see you later.
Alrighty, folks, similar to Brian, you can hit me up on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig and check out my daily antics. I do a morning radio show here in North Carolina. You can find details on that at nickcraig.com. But, love check out some of these images from this Apple Vision Pro thing. Well, you can find show notes and links to everything that we talked about on our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.